Recently on the channel I've been doing a lot of videos on the mindset side of learning French, as well as how to approach the language in a rational and pragmatic way, which is so crucial when you start getting to that intermediate level and that infamous intermediate plateau. But I do love to teach you guys the everyday French, how the French use their grammar to express themselves in a way that we couldn't learn just by translating from English to French. And I know that's why a lot of you guys follow me here on YouTube for those types of videos. So today I'm excited to dive back into this topic, and we're going to talk about some of the ways which I've noticed that French differs from English. All right, est-ce que vous êtes prêts? Allez, c'est parti. Mon point numéro 1 on the list of ways that French grammar differs from English grammar in everyday French, and in fact in just all French in general, is talking about missing someone. Now, for those of you who have either used this in a conversation and been told that you're actually wrong and were left confused, or if you're someone who looked this up before you wanted to say it and you were just left quite surprised, I totally get it. It's a bit bizarre for us until we try to find some sort of logical way to make it make sense to us. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, well, when the French want to say I miss you, for example, they don't start the sentence with I or je, they start it with tu or vous, depending on which you you're talking about. So they say tu me manques, tu me manques, if we take the example with the informal tu. And this is weird for us, right? Because we start with I miss you, but they start with you, and they say me for object pronoun for me, right? So the way this makes sense when you're an English speaker, not that it has to make sense, it doesn't have to make sense, and in fact the less translation we do, the better. However, it can put the English-speaking part of our brain at rest a bit and get us to leave us alone if we give it some logic that it can get on board with. So if you are struggling to understand this, or just for it to make sense for you in real time, then just simply think of it as tu me manques is you are missing from me. You are missing from me. And I think that's a really romantic, really lovely way of saying that. Imagine that you consider yourself whole with that other person, and when they're not there, when you miss them, they're missing from you. And this helps you understand the order of the sentence. You say, tu me manques. You are missing from me. But that is something which is obviously the completely opposite order of elements in the sentence to its English counterpart. So I had to start this list off with that. And equally, you miss me is je te manque. Je te manque. Numéro 2 sur my list is something that bugged me for a long time, and I still haven't mastered, but at least I know a couple of ways to express myself better when I want to talk about caring for someone or something. So the French don't have a verb for care. I care about you, if it's emotional like that. They have something to say to nurse something or someone, to care for them, as in they're hurt, they're ill, you care for them. That's soigner. Soigner, to nurse or to care. But when you talk about having an emotional connection with someone, to care about them, the closest I can come up with, the closest I can find is compter. Compter, to count.
Compter.
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 And when you want to say, I care about you, you use the same sort of backward logic, backwards grammar, if you like, that we use for manquer in the first example, but you say, tu comptes pour moi. Tu comptes pour moi. You count for me, if you want to use English translation. You count for me. And we can kind of understand that, right? That makes sense to us, that we care about them is to say they count for us, right? And so that's for people. Now, the closest thing I can find for things, inanimate objects, or perhaps just not people, and again I haven't mastered this, but this is what I've found from my research on Reverso and online, is that you can use the verb emporter, and I think I'm saying that correctly because it's quite easy to get confused with emporter with an E. Emporter looks like import, to import, but one of its uses is as emporter à quelqu'un, and it means it's important for someone, or it matters to them. And matters is similar to care, right? It's important, it holds a place in their heart, or for them, it's important for them. So you can say, ce qui m'importe est mon travail. Ce qui m'importe est mon travail. What is important to me, what matters to me is my job, is my work. So compter pour quelqu'un and importer à quelqu'un. Now, numéro 3 of the ways where French grammar differs from English grammar. Have you guys heard about the different ways to say I don't mind / I don't care? Now, if you have, you've probably come across je m'en fiche, and the stronger, more vulgar, far less formal je m'en fous, right? And it's important just to be able to say, cool, that's how I say it, and just start using it. That is important. However, when you're more comfortable with that, and you're not going to drive yourself crazy over the grammar, but you're more just curious about it, we can see that I don't care or I don't mind is a negative sentence in English. I don't mind, don't care. But in French, it's an affirmative sentence, right? Je m'en fiche. There's no ne and there's no pas there, right? Je m'en fiche. So I was like, well, okay, what if I want to say I do care? So when you're talking using these phrases, it's more like when someone's giving you a choice, giving you an option, you say, I don't mind, I don't care, go with whatever, right? You say, je m'en fiche, or je m'en fous. And there's other ways to say it, but those are two common ones in informal everyday speech. So it got me thinking, well, how do I actually say, no, I do care? And I've been told that you can say this affirmative phrase in the negative to make it the positive in English. So, je ne m'en fiche pas would mean I do care. Or I care. It matters. It's important to me that I know what we're choosing here, you know? Or the same with je m'en fous, je ne m'en fous pas. Right? Apparently you can use it, but I don't think it's very common. I would love if there are any French natives or people more advanced than me down in the comments to let me know if this is used. But I've been told by Solène, who you guys have seen on the channel, and other people that it does make sense. But I just don't know how much is actually used. So please do let me know in the comments if you know more than me. But I find this fascinating and annoying because it doesn't feel the same when I want to say I do care. To say je ne m'en fiche pas, saying a negative sentence when it means something positive, it's weird. Now the next one on my list is the use of se faire. Se faire, the pronominal version of the verb faire is se faire. And roughly the French use is to say when something happens to you or when you get something done. So for example, to go and get your hair cut, you say je me fais couper les cheveux. Je me fais couper les cheveux. I'm getting someone to cut my hair. Je me fais couper les cheveux. So we have this very flexible verb get in English, and the French use faire, which you think of as do and make, but it's actually the pronominal version of it. So again, the more you try and translate from English to French, the more annoying it gets, and there isn't really a perfect way to explain it in English. But they say je me fais couper les cheveux, right? They use se faire a lot, and I can't go into all the ways to use it because it's very, very versatile and a very good verb to learn when you're at that intermediate level and you want to speak more naturally, right? Another way they do use it though is to say to be robbed. Imagine that someone steals your wallet. In English, we would tend to say someone did this, right? You can say, I was robbed of, but to me it sounds a bit less natural. Maybe to you you'll disagree, but I think that's the common way of saying it. But in French, they would often just say, use se faire again. They would say, je me suis fait voler mon portefeuille. Je me suis fait voler mon portefeuille. So it's se faire in passé composé. Je me suis fait voler. Je me suis fait, and then the infinitive voler. If you try and logic it out in English, it's like I got myself stolen my wallet, which, it's a bit harsh if you look at it like that. Does that mean they're saying it's their fault? Is there something psychological there that suggests that they think it's their fault? Or is it just a different grammatical structure and we should accept it? Probably the latter. However, there's often these clues onto how a society thinks, how a culture thinks in their language, and that's always fascinating. So se faire is my next point on the list. Ensuite, we have when the French use on, the subject on, to mean someone or they. This is how it would be typically used in English. So I tell you a lot on this channel to use on instead of nous when you're talking about we, because that's how French use it in day-to-day life, and that absolutely is true. But a lot of the time, when someone that you don't know calls you or tells you something, right, they're not particularly the focus of the sentence. It's more about the action or the result of it. They will say on, where we would say someone did this, or someone called me, or they called me, right? So in English, if we want to think about saying someone called me, we look someone up in French and we get to quelqu'un, and we say quelqu'un m'a appelé. And again, you would be understood if you said this, right? But typically the French use on. And so, for example, if you got your wallet was stolen, like in the previous point, and you've called the police and they're going to call you back with new information, you don't really have a name of someone who's going to call you, but you're telling someone later on that someone from the police called you. In English, we might say they called me, referring to the whole of the police, right? But in French, they use on. So one, if you look at it like that, it means one. One called me. Someone called me. On m'a appelé aujourd'hui pour me dire qu'on avait trouvé mon portefeuille. Or perhaps they can say qu'ils avaient trouvé mon portefeuille. So they do sometimes switch between the subjects, like if they use on for m'appeler, m'a appelé, and then they use il later on. So, you know, everyday French, they break their own rules, but what I want to get across here is they use on to talk about someone. Or you can say that someone told me that it's prohibited to go outside. On m'a dit qu'il est interdit de sortir. On m'a dit, someone told me. And the French use this all the time, and so I advise you to start using it ASAP, because I just instantly feel more French when I use their own constructions rather than translating to English. And this is a lot of the time, a French person isn't going to correct you because they've got better things to do with their time, and you've made yourself understood. So hopefully I can keep getting these bits of French over to you, bizarrely, in English, but I like being an unlikely source of information. Now this point is a bit more tricky to explain because again it is two separate languages, and the logic doesn't always work, or at least maybe I haven't found the right words yet. But in English, when we would tend to use can before the infinitive of a verb, like I can drive or I can sing, the French would typically use savoir instead of pouvoir, so to know, and that basically means to know how to. You don't have to say je sais comment plus the infinitive. Savoir encompasses it all. So for those two examples of I know how to drive and I can sing, they would typically say je sais conduire and je sais chanter. Je sais chanter, right? Or they'd simplify it even further and just say like oui je conduis or oui, je chante, right? But hopefully you see what I mean. In English, we might say, yeah, I can drive. But when we say I can, we often just mean I know how to, right? Then there's a more subtle situation where you say, yes, I can drive. I'm able to drive right now if you need me to drive. In that situation, the French person would say, je peux conduire. If you say, you know, I need someone to drive me, can you drive us? Oui, je peux vous conduire, right? But typically, if you're asking them if they know how to do something, they're going to use savoir. But that isn't always obvious for us English speakers because we express knowing how to do something with can. We use can a lot. Voila, that's all I have for you guys today on my list of some of the more useful ways that the French grammar differs from English grammar in everyday natural language. So I hope for you guys to be able to go away and apply at least one of these points to your conversations and sound a bit more like the natives. If, however, you are struggling with your confidence in the spoken French language, then I may well be able to help you with my one-on-one coaching program. It's specifically made for English speakers who are struggling with their confidence around the français parlé, and I would love to be able to help you out. So if you're interested, do go ahead and click in the link down in the description below to find out if it's for you and whether or not I could help you with your spoken French. All right, guys, please do leave a like down below. It really helps me spread the word and get more budding French learners like yourself interested in my content. And subscribe if you haven't done already. But until next time, merci beaucoup de m'avoir regardé. À la prochaine. Ciao.